Good morning, everyone. So today we have Dr. Dipankar Dev with us. He will take the first session of this third day of our STTP. Dr. Dipankar Dev is presently associated with the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Rams. He is a senior member IEEE and he have spent more than 6 years in the industry in New York and GE Global Research, Bangalore, India. He received his PhD in the University of Virginia, US 2007, and Master from the University of Florida 2004. From July 2015 to 19, he has served as an associate professor, and from January 24, 2019 onward, he is working as a professor in the Electrical Engineering Department at Institute of Infrastructure Technology Research and Management, Ahmedabad. He has held 6 granted US patents, 1 Indian patents, and he has published 35 SCI Index journals. And he also in his career, he have 40 plus international conferences. He has also authored 11 books.
Speaker
Springers and elsewhere. He is a book series editor also with a Springer for the book series titled Studies in Infrastructure and Control. And as an associate editor for and he is also working as an associate professor of IEEE Access. He has worked extensively in the area of the electric control, acting flow control, renewable energies, cognitive robotics, and machine learning. Apart from that, he is one of the top academician in this state of Gujarat, and he have filed many patents. So it's my pleasure to introduce to Dr. Dipankar Dev. Dr. Dipankar Dev, please share your presentation.
Am I audible to everyone? Am I audible to everyone?
My voice is audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible? Yes. Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you, Professor Abhishek, for a very kind introduction.
Friends, I have accepted this. That application part.
I hope.
Yeah, Dipankar sir, my voice is clear to you?
Yeah. I am able to hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, sir. Now okay. Your voice is coming.
Okay,
please.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you.
Just before I take one small introduction is just skipped. Dr. Dipankar is also associate with the minor of aerospace in IIT Ram. So all of you, please very seriously listen to his lectures. It will be really very beneficial for all of you. Thank you, Dr. Dipankar. Please share.
Thank you. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So my talk for today is disturbance observer based backstepping control of tail seater UAVs. So my primary objective for today, of course, you can see here it is 1/63. So there are 63 slides, but don't be intimidated because more than 25 to 30 slides are plots, so which are at the end, and we will not spend much time there. I would like to spend most of my time in making sure that basically all the terminologies in this title are understandable, and my effort would be to tie in all of this together. So I'll be talking about what is a disturbance observer, what is an observer itself, what is backstepping control, and then how all these things together we use on something called as a tail seater UAVs. UAVs is unmanned aerial vehicles. Okay. So UAVs have many applications. Of course, I cannot exhaust all the possible applications of UAVs over here, but some of them I would like to highlight. Precision agriculture, it's a very, in large scale farming, UAVs have a big role to play because the farmer cannot reach everywhere at every possible time instant and or as frequently as he would like. So UAVs are helpful over there in search and rescue missions. You can imagine it's very useful. One of our project teams, a group of students at IIT Ram, has worked on a project of a hexacopter. Okay, with 6 quadcopter means it has 4 rotary wings. Hexacopter has 6 of them, and they have designed a hexacopter to rescue, to basically replace firefighters. Okay, so the hexacopter would reach at a certain height and drop some amount, certain types of balls, which would extinguish the fire or help reduce extinguishing of the fire. UAVs are increasingly being discussed that they can be used in shipping and delivery, in geographic mapping, aerial photography. You know, you want to capture a certain motion of a lion, you are not advised, it is not advisable to go very close to it, but to capture a certain facial emotion of the lion, you need to be able to have a close-up picture. So UAVs are very helpful for such purposes, wildlife monitoring, disaster management, and things like that. So what is a tail-seater UAV? Okay, you are very familiar with this quadcopter UAV, I'm sure. This is the most well-known small UAV that, you know, as because aircrafts are very expensive, right? But as a flying enthusiast or as a project in a school also, one can fly these. Okay, these are called quadrotor UAVs, also called quadcopters. They have, so as you can see, there are 4 rotary wings on them, right? So tail-seaters are a combination of these kind of quadrotor UAVs and also the fixed wing UAV. Okay, so this is a miniature fixed wing. I mean, this, I'm sure all of you are familiar with. This may not be, maybe everyone is not familiar with this kind of UAV. You are probably more familiar with the Boeing 777 kind of aircraft, which is the large commercial aircraft, but that is also fixed wing. This is also fixed wing. Only thing is the dimensions are much smaller over here. That's the only difference. So tail-seater, what it does, it combines both of these, the beneficial aspect of both of these into this tail-seater UAV. So it has the, if you see over here, it has the quadrotor part on this. So there are these 4 propeller blades are there, but it just as this would do vertical takeoff and landing, right? This also does vertical takeoff and landing, and in fact, it is tail-seater is called VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing UAVs. Although this is not the only type of VTOLs that exist. The quadrotor itself is a VTOL actually, but while it is, so it sits vertically on its tail like this, okay, for takeoff and landing. So, and I will show you in the next couple of slides, I will show you different positions of the tail-seater UAV as it takes off, as it is going in a level flight mode, and then as it lands. Okay, so I will show you all those in all those views. But basically, what is the essentially here? My objective is to impress upon you that this is a combination of both of these. Okay, and what type of role it does in which kind of modes. So basically, it is sitting on its tail for takeoff and landing. Okay, so during takeoff and landing, it will look like this. Okay, where this part is vertically standing like this. Okay, and so it is able to do the same vertical takeoff and landing that the quad rotor does. Okay, but in between the takeoff and landing, for the remaining part of its flight, it can tilt. Okay, it can tilt this part. Okay, and so it works in the remaining part of its flight. It works like a fixed wing UAV. Okay, it can tilt it here. It doesn't bend or rotate. Okay, but it can only tilt. So it does it works like a fixed wing during the intermediate positions, that is between takeoff and landing. And while takeoff and landing, it works like a VTOL or quadrotor functionary. That is, it vertically takes off and vertically lands. Okay, so that's how a tail-seater UAV is. Here, I am showing you. Actually, there are more than these three modes, but broadly, or if I was there a question?
Hello.
Yeah, someone is trying to ask a question. Please go ahead. If you have a question, please go ahead. All right, looks like there was a crosstalk, so let me continue. So there are more than three modes, but primarily these three are there, and of course there can be a mode between the transition and quadrotor mode, and also the flight mode can also be segregated into more than one parts. But broadly, these are the three modes in which a tail-seater UAV works. And as you can see, during takeoff, okay, here the picture or the view that I am showing, this is in the quadrotor mode. Okay, so this is, if you take this as the X direction, this outside the plate perpendicular perpendicular coming out of that is Y, and going into the earth, that direction is Z. If you take in that way, okay, then this is the quadrotor mode. Okay, in transition, okay, while it moves from quadrotor to flight path mode, in between, okay, while it transitions to this, okay, so here it will work like a fixed wing, okay, and here it will work like a rotary wing. Okay, so in between it has to rotate this, right? So it cannot directly come into this mode. So there is a small period, generally 2 to 3 seconds, and I will show you in simulation also how that amount of time, during which some of the states, in fact, we don't even bother to control also. So that interesting part I will show you in simulation. So as it rotates for some amount of time, generally only a few seconds, it is in transition mode. Here, the states that we want to control are different from these. So it is a mode in itself. Okay, there are certain states which we need not control here in this mode, and so of course you can imagine this duration cannot be very long. Okay, but quickly it will come to this position. Okay, from this to this. Okay, and this is the mode in which it will do a level flight motion. It can also go at a certain angle of attack as well, but even the level flight mode will also come under this flight mode. Okay, so these are broadly the three modes. The same thing with more, as it transitions from takeoff to landing, how does it traverse? You can see over here. Okay, so when it is landing, it is in this position, as you can see in the original figure that we had, like this. Okay. When it is transitioning from takeoff, it will rotate in this way. And while it is transitioning to landing, means while coming back from this. So this is while takeoff, and after that it will come in this level flight mode, and then it will rotate in this way. Okay. We are not showing here what happens from this to this. It will just rotate further and come to this level flight mode. Okay. And then it will, in this level flight, it can rotate in this way. Okay. And then it is transitioning to landing. So basically it is like this. So it is taking off like this. Okay. Taking off like this. And then after a while, in a few seconds, it will reach in this level flight. It can do this kind of motion. Okay. And then it will, from this position, it will transition to landing like this. Okay. So this is the flight regime of this tail-seater UAV. Now, like I said, broadly it is working in 3 different modes, but our objective, as you can see from the title of this talk, is that we want to control the flight of this tail-seater UAV. And to do this, we are using, because those of you who are familiar, we use observers when we cannot get precise measurement of any particular state. Okay, when precise or reliable measurements are not available, then you need observers. And disturbance observer is nothing but when you are observing this disturbance signal. And how to do that, I'll be talking in depth on that. So that will be then called as a disturbance observer. So basically, here what we are doing, we have a desired trajectory for our flight. So desired trajectory means what? That you want to, let's say, take off like this, and then you have a level flight mode, and then you want to rotate in this way and then land in this way, right? So how long you want to transition like this, how long or at what angle, and how quickly you want to move in this level flight mode, all of this is determined by your desired trajectory. Okay, so that is something which you want your tail-seater to follow. So the trajectory is already assigned to you, let us say. Okay, now sometimes you may want to hit an enemy's target and things like that, and at that time you will have to adapt to the position or adapt to a certain trajectory. But sometimes the target may be a fixed one, or the trajectory in which you want to go may be predefined due to several reasons. So you may have such a desired trajectory. So if you have one like this, okay, so that's something that we want our tail-seater UAV to follow. So that signal is available to us. The backstepping controller is used generally, and I will show you. In fact, this is there are a lot of mathematics, but I will, because we have a generic, attendees, means people from diverse background, I'm told. So I will specifically take one example where I will show you how we are going to apply the backstepping controller. Generally, but at this stage, let me just say that when you have, was there a question? If you have a question, please go ahead and ask. Otherwise, please mute yourself, so that, because if I hear some noise, I feel that there is a question. All right. Okay. So, okay. So when do we use a backstepping controller? When the number of states that we want to measure or that are available for measurement are larger than the number of inputs that we have. Okay, this is in under-actuated systems, what we do is that we use some of the states to control other states. Okay, so let's say you have 9 states that in your system, but you have 3 inputs. Okay, and especially in a nonlinear system, you this may not be adequate for you to control the entire system. So what you do, you divide your system into 3 different subsystems. Okay, that's the subsystem 1, 2, and 3. So subsystem 1, those states, okay, you will choose in the subsystem 1 which are available for measurement. Okay, and you will use that to control the subsystem 2. Then once the subsystem 2 is controlled, you will use those states to, of course, and I am saying once it is controlled, it doesn't mean that it is a very slow process. This will happen in the inner loop and quite fast. And subsystem 2 will be used to control subsystem 3, and you will use those 3 inputs to control the control the subsystem 1. So in this way, you will have a closed loop of your control signals. So this is called control allocation or control authority. Okay. So anyways, when you have such a under-actuated system, backstepping control is one of the more popular nonlinear control methodologies, and I will show you this with a simple example. Okay, so you will have that signal which will go into your controller, and then the controller will give you these input signals. Okay, this can be input to your motors. You may use, typically people use BLDC motor. Okay, so there are 4 of these. Okay, which will be generated based on the RPM of the and I will show you those equations also based on the RPM of the BLDC motors. And these are the inputs which are acting on our quadrotor tail seater UAVs. Okay, so this is where our dynamical equations are. Okay, and these are my inputs. Okay, now if all the states were available for measurement, then simply I would have used some control gain and generated my controller, which would have gone as input to the controller. So this part would not have been there. Okay, if all the states were available for measurement. But because of sensor uncertainties, because of disturbances and things like that, all states are not always available for measurement. So in that case, you need a observer. But when you are in a disturbance prone region, especially with wind gust and things like that, and that is why in our simulations we are going to show you disturbance compensation in presence of wind gust. So when you have such a disturbance signal, let's say, which will modify your tail seater UAV dynamics, okay, you need to have a disturbance observer for this. So this D is not available for measurement, and that's why you need to generate something called as D hat. Okay, so D hat is an estimation of D. Okay, and so D hat will be estimated based on what? Based on the input signal. Okay, based on some of the states of this quadrotor tail seater UAVs, and you will generate a disturbance observer. Okay, this is nothing but a mathematical formulation which takes the input U as a signal and some of the states of the system which is seeing the disturbances. Okay, and it generates, so it's nothing but a nonlinear function, and generates this disturbance signal, estimate of this as an output, and that signal is then given to our backstepping controller. So this part in red signals that you see over here are related to the disturbance observer. That means if there is no disturbance, then this part doesn't exist. Of course, there will be a controller gain which will be going to the backstepping controller. All right. Okay. So these.
Sir, can you
Yeah.
please repeat last nonlinear disturbance observer part, sir, please?
Yeah, sure. When you ask a question, please say your name so that it becomes, it's a interactive thing. Yeah.
Myself, Kumud Ranjan Rai, sir, your voice was breakable. That's why
Yeah,
I asked you.
I am repeating. You are Kumud Ranjan from where?
Maharashtra, sir, from
Okay, great. Thank you for your question. So I will repeat this part. So basically, if there is no disturbance signal, then these red lines that you see will not exist. Okay, there may, but there, if it doesn't exist, then there will be this blue line which will go to the backstepping controller. Maybe there will be a controller gain in this path. But if there is no disturbance, these will not exist. Now, but when there is a disturbance, you need to estimate that. Okay. So this disturbance observer. So when you don't know something, if it is in the form of a state, you will design an observer for that. And I will show you how, for a simple linear system, how an observer is developed. But here, these disturbance signals are not necessarily signals, not disturbances in the states. It can be that also, but it can be an external disturbance signal also. When you have such a thing, you need to generate a disturbance observer using the input signals and the states or output. If you are doing state feedback, then the states. If you are doing output feedback control, then the output of this tail seater UAV. So using those, the input and the states, you will pass it through this disturbance observer. It is nothing but a nonlinear function, and generate an estimate of this disturbance signal. That estimate will be fed to the backstepping control. Does that answer your question, Dr. Kumud?
Yes, sir. Sir, I am a PhD student, not a doctor, sir.
Okay.
Actually, I want to ask you one more question, sir. Here, you are telling that the disturbance is there the input and state there is itself disturbance or not? Means I am asking
these
about
these signals.
no,
these,
sir.
then?
About the states, sir. States it's having noise, or you are not considering any disturbance in their state? My question is that one.
No, yeah, I'm saying this methodology will work both for disturbances in the states, when some signal you are not able to, if you have disturbance signal in the state itself, okay, some additive noise or things like that, and also for external disturbances. For both kind of disturbances, this nonlinear disturbance observer will be useful. Do you get it? I'm saying if there is an external disturbance, of course, that disturbance can be estimated using this process. But even if, because observer by itself, actually I'm not right now, momentarily I'm not talking about disturbance observer. Any observer, as I will show you soon in the next, after few slides, any observer is used when you do not know some of your states precisely. You will not know some of your states precisely if there is some noise, if there is some sensor uncertainties and things like that. So this disturbance observer will work even when there are disturbances in your state measurements, and of course external disturbances.
Yes, sir. I am getting, sir.
Okay, thank you. So with that, let me introduce you to these set of equations. These are very, these equations are familiar to anyone who has worked with UAVs. They are the body axis velocities in the X, Y, and Z direction, which are given by U, V, and W. Okay, and PQR are the angular velocities. Okay, and as you can see here, these IXX, IYY, and IZZ, these are moment of inertia about each of those axes, X, Y, and Z. These omega, large omega, that you can see over here, they are the rotations given by the propellers in the quadrotor part of our tail-seated UAV. Okay, and this is the thrust, and L and D are the lift and drag. Alpha is the angle of attack. Angle of attack basically is the angle that your vehicle makes with the horizon. Okay, so the angle at which, for example, any commercial aircraft, you will hear it very often if you are studying papers in this area, that low angle of attack. Okay, low angle of attack means the angle at which your aircraft is, climbing, let's say, with respect to the horizon is low, means is less than 15 degrees. Okay, so that's why you will not find commercial aircrafts doing unnatural maneuvers like fighter aircrafts, because fighter aircrafts can fly at angle of attack of 70-80 degrees, but your Boeing 777 cannot go beyond angle of attack of around 15 degrees. So anyways, these are the dynamical equations of our tail-seater UAV, and all these details I will not go through, but I am having here for completeness, because these are topic in itself. However, these parts I will give you some insight how these U1, U2, U3, U4 are generated, because these are my inputs to the tail-seater UAV in this form. Okay, after the motor dynamics. So those are generated like this. Okay, so you have the 4 different rotary parts of your tail-seater UAV. So basically these 4. Okay, these 4 rotary part of your tail-seater UAV. So these inputs are different combinations of these omega 1, omega 2, omega 3, and omega 4. For example, U1 is nothing but the omega 1 square, means sum of all of these, square sum of all of these, and multiplied with some constant k. Okay, so that is U1. Like this, L times omega 4 square minus omega 2 square. It's the difference in the rotational speed of this will give you U2, and U3 is with the other 2 propellers. So front and back, and left and right. Okay, so those 2 will give you U2 and U3, and U4 is where these 2 are negative and 2 and 4 are positive. So like this, instead of these rotary values, you now have inputs which are translated based on what is this L? This L is nothing but actually from the center of your vehicle, center of gravity of your vehicle to the center of the propeller, that distance is L. Okay, so like this we generate this U1, U2, U3, U4. Okay, so those are my inputs and the system dynamics. So that part is introduced. Now I would like to first, like I said, I will explain to you what is an observer. Maybe some of you are not familiar with that. So anyway, some details are there in these slides. The slides will be available with Dr. Rawat. He will be sharing with all of you. Let me explain this with the help of this block diagram. Okay, what is an observer really? Let us say you have this missile. Okay, you have a input in terms of the fuel rate, let's say, of at which it is consuming the fuel. Okay, let's say that is one of the input. And you are measuring temperature. You want to measure temperature inside this. Okay, now you cannot have a sensor inside, right? Or if this is little less understandable, let us take an example of a locomotive. Okay, there are cylinders. Okay, that's a 12-cylinder locomotive. Now inside the intake manifold, you cannot measure temperature. Why? Because any sensor you put over there, it will melt, right? Because those are at 700 degree Kelvin temperatures in which the fuel is burning, right? But you need that measurement, because otherwise how will you know if you don't know the temperature inside at which the fuel is burning, you will not be able to calculate many things, air to fuel ratio and many other things that any engine control person would like to know. But so what you can do, you can put the sensor somewhere outside the manifold. Okay, it is still hot, but it is not 700 degrees Kelvin. Okay, it is, let's say, 40, 50 degree centigrade or equivalently to Kelvin, like that. So the sensor is not melting, but you are getting some temperature which is, and you have some, based on data, you can estimate what is the temperature inside. Okay, so that using such methods you have so this is external temperature, this is the estimate of the external temperature, right? All right, now you have an estimate of the external temperature. Now you want to do several other studies, but you cannot every time, ignite the fuel inside the, the missile, and, it will. So this is not a very practical. I am again hearing some crosstalk. So this is not a very practical process of. I request, if you are not.
Dhaval, please mute all the participants. Please.
Yeah, thank you. So this is not a very practical way of doing things, right? It's very expensive. So what you do is that you come up with a mathematical model equivalent to this, to the actual missile, right? And now you can go crazy. You can put different inputs to this. You will have an estimate. You will have a certain temperature and things like that. And if you want to come closer and closer to that estimated, to the real temperature, you will, with lot of data, you will be able, and using system identification and things like that, you can come up with a mathematical model which is a good representation of this missile. So this is how actually all control system, I'm sure all of you have studied control systems, right? In your BTech level, you are always looking at transfer function. But if I ask you, how do you know that this transfer function is representing, let's say, a crane, inverted pendulum and things? Inverted pendulum is simple, but let's say a system which has many states, and I suddenly give you a transfer function, say that this transfer function is representing this system, right? So how do you know? This is the process actually, that by giving several inputs and observing several different outputs, you come up with something which is representing your system reasonably well. And then you work, you put controller on that, and you do different things on that mathematical model. And finally, when everything is done, then you can apply that controller, which is mathematical in nature, on the physical system like this missile, right? You cannot do this testing on that missile all the time, right? It's like saying that estimating, at what time or with how much fuel the moon lander will land in moon, right? You cannot, you have to do many of the things using some models. I'm sure this is understandable, because you actual physical thing is like every time for every test going to the moon, but that is not possible. So that's why this estimation or these observer processes, these techniques are very useful. So basically, in simple terms, this is an observer. Okay, that you don't have the actual measurement, you estimate it. Okay, and then use that estimation for further process. All right. So how does this work in a feedback control system? Basically, if I have the external temperature and I did the estimation of that, then I will find the error between the two, right? My objective in an ideal scenario, the error will be 0, but in practice, it will not be 0, right? So what we do is that this is the actual true external temperature. This is an internal temperature inside the T internal is internal temperature inside the missile. And this T external estimate is what I explained to you in the previous slide through the observer. And now I have this available. So what I will do, I will find the error between these two, okay, and use that error. And my hope is that over time, this error will go to 0. So what I will do, I will use this, take that error, pass it through some gain K, okay, and feed it back to this mathematical model. And then I will get this estimation of my internal temperature. This is how I will know through this process, by doing all of these things, I will know over time what is the internal temperature for this model, because I cannot measure this, okay, and I cannot do an estimation of this directly also. Because to estimate you need a measurement of a similar thing, right? So the similar thing is this external temperature, and so you estimate like this, right? So over time, this will get controlled through this gain K and passing through inside the mathematical model. So this is how, and that error is E. Okay, and so basically what I'm doing is that I'm finding this error E, which is a T estimate minus T estimate hat, and K is my controller gain. Actually, gain word is missing. T is the controller gain, and if there is only gain which is the controller, then of course you can also call it as controller, because that gain is controlling. So the controller itself can be called as K, but I would prefer to call it the controller gain. Okay. Now, so this error, I showed you how we can estimate and how we can find this error, right? Now, let us say instead of this missile and instead of this mathematical model, let us say that I have this x dot is ax plus bu and y is cx. Okay, this is my system. Okay, y is what? Y is like that external temperature, right? And y hat is like the estimate of that external temperature. So my mathematical model is not this exactly. It is an estimation of x. So x hat dot is equal to ax hat plus bu and y hat plus cx hat. So instead of this, the missile actual dynamics, I have an estimate of that dynamics. Okay. Now, and this is like, this x is like the internal temperature. This is the estimate of the internal temperature. Okay, and this is the fuselage input. So E is x minus x hat. So E dot is x dot minus ax dot, x dot minus x hat dot, and then in place of x dot you will put ax plus bu. In place of x hat dot you will put ax hat plus bu. So when you do this, after some cancellation, this will get cancelled, and then you will have this plus k y minus y hat, and y is what? Y is cx, and y hat is what? Cx hat. So you will have k, c, and x minus x hat, right? And x minus x hat is E. So you have what? Ax minus ax hat. So that is A times x minus x hat is E. So AE plus KC E, right? So basically E dot is what? A plus KC times E. So now you have a you have a ordinary differential equation which you can solve actually, because if E dot is A plus Kc times E, then you can actually solve for that E. E is what? E to the power, actually the one minus sign has gone for a toss, because normally we do, this is, normally we do a negative feedback when we want to come up with a, when we want to progressively reduce the error, we use a negative feedback. So this minus K should be there. And so you will have E to the power A minus Kc times T, and E naught is the initial error at time 0. So if A minus Kc is less than 0, that means if this exponent part is less than 0, then what will happen? This part will reduce. But if A minus Kc was, let's say, 2, then E to the power 2t will expand with time, right? Because as t goes to infinity, E to the power infinity is infinity. So then your error will grow. So for your error to reduce, you need A minus Kc to be less than 0. Now, if this exponent is less than 0, then what will happen? As t goes to infinity, E to the power minus infinity is what? 0. So that's why the error will go to 0. When the error goes to 0 means what? My y has gone to y hat, right? So that means, or x has gone to x hat. Okay, this same thing, because c is typically a known number or a vector. So this is how we do observer design for a linear system. Of course, in my case here, I have a nonlinear system, and here I'm doing, like I already described in few slides back, our disturbance observer is actually doing the same observing or estimation. For example, this D is being estimated by this D hat using this nonlinear disturbance observer. Okay. So I'll skip some of these.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Can I ask
Yeah.
one question? Sir, what is linear observer and non-linear observer, sir?
So when you, yeah, good question. When you have a linear system, okay, like this, okay, your observer is simply this part, A minus Kc part, right? So this is linear. But like I said, our tail-sitter UAV dynamics, you can see these are nonlinear equations, right? So when you have nonlinear equations, naturally you cannot compensate or you cannot estimate them with a generally. Of course, there are some cases where nonlinear system can also, but those are, the nonlinear system has to have some specific structure. Okay, it has to be linear, what you call as linear in parameters. If it is linear in parameters, okay, that topic is itself, if someone is interested to know linear in parameters, I can refer you to some papers. But nonlinear systems typically need nonlinear observers. Linear system will typically need linear observers, because of course some nonlinear, specific class of nonlinear systems can also have linear observers. Linear means the or observer being linear means the function that does the estimation. For example, here we did the estimation in this way, right? Using this A minus Kc part, okay, and because this goes to 0, so I am able to observe this, or I am able to estimate y with y hat reasonably. So for a linear system here, my observer is linear. But in my nonlinear dynamical equations, typically my observer is nonlinear in nature. Especially if you are estimating disturbance, then definitely it is nonlinear in nature, and so you need a nonlinear function. And like I said earlier also, the observer is nothing but a function. So the function which is nonlinear is a nonlinear observer, and that function which is linear in nature is typically called as a linear observer. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this part I will skip for lack of time, because I want to give you a conceptual understanding of the backstepping and this disturbance observer. So let me now get to backstepping control. Okay. Some details of this are here, you can read, but I would like to explain to you backstepping using this simple example. And this is where I want to now spend maybe the next 10 minutes or so in the next 3 slides. Okay. Because the structure of our tail-seater UAV is also, or each of the subsystem inside the tail-seater UAV is similar to these very simple structures. So let us first understand this. If you understand the next 3 slides properly, then you are ready to study any literature in nonlinear UAV control. So please pay attention for the next 10-15 minutes, rapt attention. Okay. So here I have a nonlinear system. Why it is nonlinear? Because although this part is linear, x dot is xu, x1 dot is x2 is linear, but this function x2 dot is f of x1 x2. I am not told what exactly this function is, but I just know that this is a nonlinear function. I will show you one example in our tail-seater UAV dynamics itself. Okay, I will show you one example of a nonlinear function there. So right now you can assume for this example any nonlinear function in terms of x1 and x2 which you know. Okay, here we are assuming that this f of x1 x2 is some function. It can be x1 square plus x2 cube, or x1 square minus 2 by 3 x2 to the power 4, anything, but they are measurable. This x1 and x2 I can measure with some sensors. Okay, and b is another some constant, and u is the input. Okay, if you have a nonlinear system like this, where input is in one of the equation, the other equation doesn't have any input. If you have this kind of structure, that is called as a strict feedback structure. If you have a structure like this, then this process of control that I am going to show you works on this. It can also work in system like x1 dot is x2, x2 dot is x3, okay, and x3 dot is equal to this. This can, there you may have n number of these kind of equations, but the input is only in the final equation. Okay, rest of the equations are only in terms of the other states. If you have any such structure, that is called as a strict feedback system, and such nonlinear systems can be controlled in this way. Okay, any questions on this structure? I want you to, at the end of this talk, I want you to be able to explain these slide number 21, 22 and 23 to anyone. Okay, and so you should stop me here, because if any part of this is not clear to you, please feel free to stop me. Okay, because after that I will show you a role subsystem, and that is similar to this, and then I have my plots. So we have enough time, but I want you to be sure that you understand these steps well. Okay, so
Sir,
yeah,
I have a question regarding this BU. My name is Vishal.
yeah,
I am working in Radon Systems. Sir,
yes,
regarding this BU is a linear component, right, sir?
Yeah, B is a known constant and U is an input.
Yes, sir. But even aircraft may have a non-linear control input, right, sir?
Yeah, it can. But okay, let me just take you to whether I can show you from these equations. 1 second. Yeah. So here, or okay, let me actually take you to the form where I will finally apply this. Yeah. So this form, okay. So this is my equations. Okay, and here this U1 is coming from that, or U1, U2, U3, U4 are coming from my motors. Okay, we already showed this.
Yes,
U2,
yes.
U3, and U4 are here, and U1 is in these equations. Okay, so here the component which is coefficient of this U are
Yes.
non-linear, as you can see.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this technique will work for both. Here, just for example, for simplicity of backstepping technique, I am just taking this as a constant B. Okay, and I will show you with nonlinear term also. Okay.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right. So now, first, what we do, we take an error E1 of this first variable x1. So we take E1 is equal to x1 minus x1d. So x1d is a desired state. Okay, so x1 can be position, x2. So x1 dot is x2. It's like x2 is a position. X1 is position and differentiation of that is velocity. So x2 is velocity and x1 is position. It's like this. Okay, or if it is an angle, then the rate of change of that angle, like that. Okay, so in our roll subsystem, pitch subsystem, and yaw subsystem also, we have such equations. All right, so error 1 is nothing but that state, okay, the position minus the desired position. So E1 is x1 minus x1d. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Lyapunov functions, Lyapunov proposed a very simple stability analysis of nonlinear systems without actually trying any system identification and actually trying to control and then deciding whether we can control or not. Lyapunov proposed a technique that simply by doing some mathematical operation on the variables, okay, we can conclude that the system is stable if it satisfies certain conditions. So that Lyapunov stability analysis we will apply here. So Lyapunov says, and please hear attentively here, Lyapunov says that if you can construct a positive definite function with all the error signals, so here error signal is E1, okay, so error signal is E1. Positive definite function means now this error can be positive or negative. If x1 is more than x1d, then E1 is positive. If x1 is less than x1d, then E1 is negative, right? So, but the square of E1 is always positive, right? So Lyapunov says that if you start with a positive definite function means a function which is definitely positive, irrespective of that value of error E1, right? So the simple way is to take that positive definite function as half of E1 square. Why half? Because when I differentiate it, 2 will come, right? So that 2 and this half will cancel. So I don't want to carry a 2 hanging around. So I just, in the positive, because if I take half, it doesn't change the positivity of that function, right? So to not have to carry that any number in coefficient of this E1, I just take the positive definite function as half E1 square. Because Lyapunov doesn't put any restriction on what kind of numbers you should have here. Lyapunov simply says, if you take a positive definite function and then when you differentiate it, if you can show that that differentiation of the positive definite function is negative definite, okay, which we will show. Negative definite means if V1 is positive definite and V1 dot is negative definite, means definitely negative. Okay, if you can show that, then the system will be asymptotically stable. This is a big statement, right? So we are not proving the Lyapunov stability analysis here, but we are applying that principle to establish this trajectory tracking. Okay, so V1 is half E1 square. If I differentiate this, what will I get? I'll get E1 E1 dot, right? If I differentiate V1, which is half E1 square, if I differentiate it, I will get half times 2 E1, E1 dot, and 2 and 2 will get cancelled. So E1, E1 dot, right? So what is E1 dot? E1 dot is simply X1 dot minus X1 D dot. X1 dot is X2, right? So my V1 dot is actually E1 times E1 dot, and in place of E1 dot, I will have X1 dot minus X1 D dot, and in place of X1 dot, I have X2. Okay, so that is what I will use. Okay, now to simplify this, so I can choose now. See, desired signals is something I told you, it is externally chosen. So I can choose X1D and X2D. These are in my hand. Okay, so I can choose X2D. If I choose X2D like this, X2D is equal to X1D dot minus K1 E1. If I choose like this, then my V1 dot will end up being like this. Okay, but at this stage, this is not negative definite. This second term is negative definite because this E1 square is positive, K1 is chosen to be positive, and because there is a minus sign, this is negative definite. But E1 times E2 can be anything, can be positive, can be negative. Okay, if both of them have the same sign, then it is positive. If they have different sign, then it is negative. So our process of inference is not complete yet at this stage. Okay, so I have to take another positive definite function, and that positive definite function I choose like this. V2 is V1 plus half of E2 square. Okay, so this is positive definite. So again, if I add something like half of E2 square, that is also positive definite. So now if I differentiate and E2 I can take as X2 minus X2D, just as E1 I took X1 minus X1D. Okay, now if I differentiate this V2, okay, I will get what? V2 dot is E1 minus, E1 E2 minus K1 E1 square plus E2 E2 dot. Okay, now I will do some substitution here because E2 dot is what? X2 dot minus X2D dot. Okay, and X2 dot is given here. So I will, when I substitute this over here, okay, I get V2 dot like this. Okay, but then V2 dot, I have not yet. Please mute yourself. If you don't have a question, please mute yourself so that it doesn't. Yeah, thank you. So V2 dot is this term, but here this one is negative definite, but these two we don't know yet. But note this U. U is what? Input. So you can always choose a control signal, right? You choose means you can come up with a control signal. Let me take you to that block diagram. Yeah. So you can come up with what is the input which will go over here. And that can, of course, depend on so many other things. So you can generate this signal and then that goes inside the tail setter, right? So this input signal, you can generate. So now I will choose my input signal in this way. If I choose in this way and substitute over here, then many of these terms will get cancelled and I will get V2 dot is minus E1 E2. How? If you just substitute in place of this, if you substitute this, what will happen? See, B times U is this. I'm saying I'm defining U to be 1 by B. B is a positive number, so 1 by B, there is no problem. I can make this. So 1 by B times this, right? So BU is what? I am saying BU is equal to minus E1 minus K2 E2. So I am trying to cancel some of these. Means I'm trying to, because I want to cancel E1 E2 because E1 E2 is positive or can be positive, right? I don't want it to be positive. So I want to cancel E1 E2. If I want to cancel E1 E2, I have E2 over here. I need to generate something inside which is minus E1. So that's why I put minus E1 over there. So BU, in place of BU, if I put all these things, what will happen? I'll have minus E1 times E2 is minus E1 E2. That will get cancelled with this, right? And I have minus f x1 x2, which will get cancelled with this part. I have a plus x2d because this x1 d double dot and minus k1 e1 dot is nothing but is this actually. Okay, so because if you have a dot over here, if x, because x2d this x2d is over here, right? So if you want to cancel this part, you will put this. So this x1 d double dot and minus k1 e1 will get cancelled with this. Here actually this is a dot. This dot has got missed inside. So you will have, so minus k1 e1 dot will get cancelled. Minus f of x1 x2 will get cancelled with this. So basically only this term will remain. That is your objective. So how now if you should ask me, but how will I know what to choose in U? So anything that will cancel this one, okay, because there is no other way of making it negative definite. So you have to you have E2. So you need to generate minus E1 inside it. So that's why we have done this one. And f of x1 x2 is a known function. So you can take minus f of x1 x2 like this. Choose your U because among all of these, U is the one which is the input function. So that you can provide. So the control engineer can decide or can generate this signal. So if you put this inside, all of these terms will get cancelled. Only minus k1 e1 square will remain. Okay. And minus k1 e1 square, and this one will also remain. Minus k2 e2 will get multiplied with e2. So what will you have? You will finally have minus k1 e1 square minus k2 e2 square, which is negative definite. Is this clear to everyone?
Sir, can you repeat step number 3rd, sir? Why we are going for this second virtual control input?
Because you have, yeah, that I will answer. I means this mathematics I cannot again do because it will take too much time. But I will answer why we are having, why we are doing second virtual control. That I will answer. Because you have two states, right? Lyapunov says that you have to take the error, your positive definite function should include all the error states and should be positive definite. But backstepping control, because the structure is such that it encourages us to do it step by step. Means don't take the entire positive definite function with all the states. That also we can do when we are using other nonlinear control methods. That process is also done. Means all the states square, means half u1 square and half e2 square you can directly take. But that is done for other types of nonlinear control. But in backstepping control, we do step by step. Every error signal will have its own virtual control signal. Okay, so that's why, so half u1 square, but half u1 square is not the entire positive definite function because you have two states. That is why the second virtual control is required. And here if you see, v2 is nothing but half u1 square plus half e2 square. But I don't write it like that direct. Then you may say that then why don't we start directly from here? Because we want to generate this part, v1 dot. Okay, so v1 dot is already here. Okay, it's easy to visualize. Otherwise, it's not possible to come up with this kind of equation. So when you, but if you put like this is positive definite function. Now when you do v2 dot, v1 dot plus e2 dot, then here in place of v1 dot you can substitute this. So when you substitute, that's why v2 dot is this. Okay, and then in place of e2 dot you can substitute this part and then do this calculation, you will get this. Okay, so this part of course you have to do it with hand, pen and paper yourself. It means it is, when I speak about it, you can kind of get that, yeah, it works. But Only when you actually substitute it and see that yes, the terms are getting cancelled, only then you actually fully you can understand. So I will encourage you to do this step. Right?
Sir,
Yeah.
can we say that the number of state equal to number of virtual control equal to number of Lyapunov function?
Yeah, number of states in the subsystem is will be equal to the number of virtual control and will be equal to the number of terms in the positive definite function. But because we are doing backstepping control, we don't do all the virtual control at the same time, and we don't do all the Lyapunov, all the positive definite terms at the same time. Okay, you have to do in this stepwise manner. Only then you know. See, when you encounter this, you know that this part is negative definite. I have to somehow cancel this. So that is how you then generate this, and that is why you know that here you have to come up with minus E1, because minus E1 times E2 will get cancelled with this. Otherwise, there will be no way to come up with this term. Okay, this will then seem very arbitrary. All right. So with that, let me in the next 10 minutes or so that I have, let me take you to here. So ultimately, and here again I will apply backstepping control, and you will see this thing very clearly. This is the full dynamics of our tail-sitter UAV, and there are several subsystems. So for example, this is the roll subsystem, okay, pitch subsystem, yaw subsystem, like this. Okay, this is altitude subsystem. So Y direction, Z direction, X direction, and roll, pitch, and yaw. Okay, these are that is why these are called 6 degrees of freedom. Okay, so X, Y, Z, and the angles. Okay, roll angle, pitch angle, and yaw angle. Okay, so and 3 angular directions and 3 linear linear directions. So that is why we call these as 6 degrees of freedom. These vehicles have 6 degrees of freedom. They can rotate in 3 directions and also move in 3 directions. So these are my equations. So for 6 degrees of freedom, you have 12 equations. Okay, and each of them are, and this is where I want this part to be well understood, that there is not only one backstepping control. There are each backstepping control for each subsystem. For example, this phi dot and phi double dot. I am not able to select my cursor in this way. Means everything is getting highlighted if I try to do. Yeah, but I am trying to say these two phi dot and phi double dot equation. These two are the roll subsystem. This is exactly like what I just did. Okay, x1 dot, x2 dot. x1 dot is x2 and x2 dot is some nonlinear function plus I think we had bu. So here b1, u2. u2 is generated from one of the propellers. That means it's one of the inputs generated from the propellers. Okay, so like this, for the pitch subsystem, that's a different input u3, but the structure is similar. For the yaw subsystem, there is a third type of input u4, where the structure is again similar. So if I do for the roll subsystem, if I do this control, then again the same thing. Now here I don't have to repeat the steps, but the same thing. x1 dot is x2, x2 dot is this. Okay, so I start with one of the, so because x1, so that subsystem I will take. So VTM1 is equal to half E1 square, and then differentiate. So that is E1 dot is equal to this. I want this. Actually, this is not yet proven. I want it to be minus K1 E1 square. But I am having this plus E1 E2, right? If you substitute, you will see like the previous case, you will get plus E1, E2. So you will actually have this. This is what you get. This is what you want. Okay. So because you get this, now you have to take another positive definite function for half E2 square. Okay, and then differentiate this, and you will have to choose this U2. I am not, of course, here I am not showing all the steps, but your U2 you have to design in this way to make it minus K1 E1 square and minus K2 E2 square, just like what we did over here. Okay, so like this, the process continues. So the roll subsystem control will be done by this way. Okay, U2 will be generated like this. Similarly, for pitch subsystem, U3 will be generated by controlling theta dot and theta double dot in this way. And for the yaw subsystem, U4 will be generated by this process. And U1 will be generated in the attitude subsystem like this in the same way, Z dot and Z double dot. And using, once you have U1, you can of course control the other two states also. Okay, so this is what the backstepping control is, and we apply this in all the three modes. Okay. So yeah, just a second. I have only about 14 minutes. I will take your question, but I want to give time to others also. So if there are, I will come back to your, because I have already taken some of your questions. I will definitely take, and if required offline also I will take your questions. But for the next this 13-14 minutes that I have, first I want to see if there are others who have questions. Anyone, please, any question related to any of the modes or any of these backstepping control, disturbance observer, any question?
Sir, one question is on the chat box, please.
Okay, let me see. Share PPT of first 2 days. Where is the question?
Can noise be treated as an error in this Lyapunov function?
Noise is not. No. Okay, I am not seeing that question, but yeah. Can noise be treated as an error in the Lyapunov function? No. Noise is not a error in the Lyapunov function. The error is your state. Okay. So the state which you are not able to measure or which you are estimating, if you are able to measure, then you will take this x1 minus your desired signal x1d, you will find that error, and then you will use it in the Lyapunov function. If you are not able to measure, then you will have to first estimate using the disturbance observer that I showed, you will have to first estimate using the observer design that I showed, and then that estimate, so in place of x1 you will have x1 hat. Okay, that x1 hat is something you will assume that yes, I can measure this. Okay, so whatever I have shown over here, it's a very good question. Whatever I have shown over here will then apply on x1 hat. So x1 hat minus x1d. Okay, and that error you will take. So if again I repeat, if x1 is measurable, then you will take x1 like this, and you will take a desired signal x1d, find the error, and then use the Lyapunov function. If x1 is not measurable, let's say because of some noise and things like that, then you will do the disturbance observer or simply the Leuenberger observer and get x1 hat. When you have x1 hat, it is like an estimate of x1. So it is like you are having that x1 hat is now measurable. So x1 hat you will take as, just as here in place of x1 dot is equal to x2, you will write x1 hat is equal to x2. and then the same process will follow. Everything will be same except that x1 will be x1 hat. So x1 hat minus x1d will be E1. Okay, and then you will follow. So if there is noise, then that noise will have its bearing on the states, and that state has to be estimated. Once the state is estimated, then you will find the error between the estimate and your desired signal, and then you will apply the Lyapunov function. I hope that answers the question. Dr. Tapas Kumar Patra, I hope that answers your question. Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Yes, sir. Vishal again, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
Vishal.
the presentation was really interesting, sir. And the way you explained Lyapunov function in very basic terms, it was really understanding for us. As a control person, it was really intuitive. Sir, I have a question regarding practicality of this control law. If you want to implement nonlinear control law, one difficulty I faced was parameters of the aircraft, so which may not be available with us. So how we will handle this data, parameter issues? So I think you are on mute.
Oh, no, I am not on mute. I can hear you now. Please go ahead now.
Sir, I want to know that, sir, practicality of this nonlinear control law. So if you want to implement real time, one issue I faced was availability of parameters, because we may not have aircraft parameters accurate. So how you can handle this inaccuracy of parameters?
See, if the parameters are not known, then we use something called as adaptive backstepping control. Okay, we have done that on similar system. I can share such notes. We have to then the backstepping process is same, but there is some additional terms that will come to handle the uncertainty in the parameters. For example, this B1, okay? If B1 is something that changes with time or with some conditions and things like that, then you cannot generate your input U in this way, because here this equation means that B1 is a steady or fixed value. But if when B1 is uncertain, then you have to use something we call as adaptive backstepping. So there has to be an estimation of B1. In fact, there will be an adaptive law, it is called. So there will be an ordinary differential equation of B1 hat dot. So you will estimate this B1 using another ordinary differential equation. So the order of the system will increase. Okay, so the price that you pay is that you will have to have another equation, which is called as an adaptive law, which is nothing but an estimation of that B1. And so with that adaptive law, you can then compensate and make sure that V dot goes to 0. I have a paper on this. I can share with you. You just drop me an email. I will share.
Yes. Yeah. Have you implemented it, sir, in any of drones or any systems?
I have implemented not in these means I have implemented adaptive backstepping on and using, in fact, with actuator uncertainties and things like that on this NACA Wing 9 model of fighter aircrafts of NASA many years ago. But on this small scale UAVs, we are now this is my recent work, basically, application, because now I don't have access to fighter aircrafts models and things like that, because those work I did during my PhD in US. But now I'm working more on applying these control techniques on quadrotors, biplane. Biplane is a very good example of where there is aerodynamic forces in play also, along with all these factors like which are there in tail sitter and things like that. But similar techniques I have applied earlier in fixed wing fighter aircrafts and things like that. Yeah. Any other questions from anyone?
Thank you, Dr. Deepankar. I think it's one of the very best.
Sir, if you allow, I think
please share a mail ID and your mobile number on the chat box so the students can be contact you further.
Sure,
if you
sure,
can be agree.
I will do that. Now that I think there are no other questions.
Also requesting for your PPT. So is it possible we can share?
Yeah. Please, I will send to you. You may please circulate.
Thank you, Dr. Deepankar, for such a nice talk. If you have any further questions, you please mail question directly to Dr. Deepankar. Now we are going to be reached to the end of this session. The next session we will start from 1:30.
Okay.
Dr. Deepankar have shared their mail ID and his mobile number on the chat box. Okay, Dr.
All
Deepankar.
right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Take care. Have a nice day.
Sir,
yes.
Your lecture we have recorded and we will upload in the YouTubes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye.